but it may be the most important street on earth. Wall Street. It's fueled some of the greatest economic expansions ever known. It's plunged millions into poverty and ruin. Now the thrill, the terror, the technique, and the technology of the stock exchange on Modern Marvels. Every business day, more than 1 billion shares change hands on America's major stock exchanges. Nearly $90 million worth of stock changes hands every minute.
300 are coming out at 1 and 3
Brokers constantly scramble to do their clients' bidding in the battlefield of high finance.
The floor is a rather unique kind of place. It's a place where people have known each other many years. Each day get together to compete on behalf of clients they've never met.
A stock exchange is actually two markets in one. First, it's a place where a new company can raise millions or billions of dollars overnight by offering ownership of the business to hundreds of thousands of small investors. These pieces of ownership are called shares of stock. Second, the exchange is the place where people can sell their stock to someone else whenever they wish.
You could be in the airline business today, and you could be out of that, and you could be in the automobile business tomorrow. And that ability to enter and exit and get paid back for your investment in those shares creates a great market for the initial investment. People are more willing to put that money up if they know that sometime in the future they'll be able to sell out their interest and go on to the next best thing.
40% of American families own stock in U.S. companies either directly or through mutual funds and pension plans. The exchange lets people know how these companies are doing by allowing a free market to place a value on their stock.
Well, I like to say that a stock market is a market in information. I mean, it uses information from outside to evaluate companies, but then the process of the stock market creates new information by putting a price on things that everybody in the country can read.
The modern market is a tightly regulated and finely tuned institution. But this wasn't always the case. Centuries ago, investing in stocks was chaos. Ship captains offered part of their profits to those who'd share the risk of financing a trading voyage. These were all-or-nothing gambles. A ship might return with riches or might never return at all. The Romans sold stock as well for huge construction projects that were beyond the means of a single businessman. Stockholders made tidy profits by investing in companies that built roads and aqueducts for the government. Investing took a big step in the 1600s in Holland, home of the Dutch East India Company. Like the Greek seafarers before them, the Dutch needed capital for international trade. But this investment was different. People bought a stake in the company, not in a single voyage. This led to wild speculation because investors could sell their shares to one another over time. The price could rise or fall on the vaguest of rumors, spreading panic in the world's first stock exchange.
The people who lost the money were the nobles, the merchants, a class of people who, in effect, were the money people of the time who can afford to speculate. It didn't affect the economy. There was no problem there. And as far as the average person is concerned, when the crash came, he might have said to himself, it's a good thing it happened. These people deserve what they got. They're a bunch of gamblers.
The reputation of stockbrokers sunk even lower during the 1700s. In Paris, an escaped murderer sold stock. John Law swindled the public with worthless shares in fictitious gold mines. In London, brokers lured investors with stories of a secret device that could turn chickens into sheep. The value of these stocks would skyrocket. until reason took hold.
Nothing is being done, but the shares are becoming more and more valuable as time goes on. Eventually, one person says, how can these shares possibly be worth 5,000 pounds? It's ridiculous. And he starts selling. And then another person sells, and it goes to 4,000 pounds. And now a panic sets in, and the whole thing falls apart.
Despite the unscrupulous brokers, stocks helped make Europe the colonial and economic powerhouse of the world. They would soon do the same for America. Wall Street got its name when New York was a tiny colonial outpost. In 1653, Pilgrims built a wall to keep out Indians. 100 years later, the wall was gone. But the path that ran beside it had become the heart of New York's commerce and society. Here was the auction block for slaves, and the pillory for public humiliation. George Washington was sworn in as the first U.S. president on Wall Street in 1789. Wall Street was also where merchants gathered beneath a buttonwood tree to auction off stock in banks and mines, making a commission on every sale. This open-air market lasted until 1792, when 24 merchants signed a document known as the Buttonwood Agreement. The pact was an effort to avoid government regulation of street auctions. It also blocked newcomers from the business.
And a group of the auctioneers, the most powerful ones, say, you know, anyone's coming into this market. We're losing business to these people. So let's form an organization called the New York Stock and Exchange Board in that tavern over there. And we'll have a door, and we'll keep these people out.
The brokers met inside the Tontine Coffee House for 2 formal auctions per day. The public was not allowed. If you wanted to buy or sell stock, you had to hire a broker to do it.
What it did is it did one thing. It made the trading of stocks less public. So the public had less information about what was going on. In the open auction system, where it was everybody could hear, people knew more about what was going on.
These indoor sessions, where a central auctioneer sold stocks one by one, allowed brokers to regulate themselves to prevent fraud and abuse. Only reputable stocks were traded, and the sales were recorded. These procedures created an air of respectability.
You change something from, mere commerce of hawking wares on the street, you sort of put it indoors and got a certain group of people who knew each other. You're moving from a trade or just ordinary business to a profession.
During the auctions, prices were quoted in increments of 1/8 of a dollar, a holdover from the days when people carried Spanish milled dollars and cut them into pieces of 8. Only 30 companies were traded inside the exchange. Banks, cargo insurance companies, construction firms that built bridges and piers. But only a handful of fearless investors dared buy them.
Many people were afraid of stock because if the company went bankrupt, the stock owners could lose everything. So stocks were for 2 kinds of people: outright speculators or people who try to take control of the company.
The struggle for respectability on Wall Street brought only limited success. With time, the trading of less reputable stocks resumed on the street among brokers who weren't allowed to join the exchange. Here, disputes were settled with fists. Big changes, though, were in store for Wall Street. America's westward expansion would soon spark an explosion of activity. And technology would speed up the pace of business beyond anyone's wildest dream. In 1789, the first government bonds were traded on Wall Street, $80 million worth, to pay for the recent war against England. The stock exchange will continue in a moment on Modern Marvels. Several legends describe